Hello and welcome back to another episode of the For the Property Investor podcast. And we're here again with the weekly news. And of course, the only man that brings us the news is Nick Bendel. Hello, Nick.
Hello, Owen. Great to see you again. And I'm also pleased to discover that you're feeling a bit better from last week.
Yes. I'm only a little bit croaky this week. So it's some say it's more of a sexy voice, but I won't I won't put judgment on that. So yes, hopefully by next week I'll be at full force again. So yes, stay healthy, people. It's not pleasant.
Wonderful. As I say, glad to hear you're feeling better. I would ask you what you've done in the past week since we saw each other, but I already know you went to Jeff Bezos's wedding.
Yeah, I was trying not to let anyone know, Nick, but yes,
sorry.
yeah, it was a nice time of year in Venice. Some pesky little protesters, but yeah, apart from that, it was fun.
Well, I'm glad you enjoy it. And now just
I flew private, of course, yeah.
Well, obviously, I'm just wondering how you came to his attention. Was it because of this podcast, which I know has made us both global celebrities, or was it your wonderful property management business, Leafield, which is active in 5 states?
Yeah, well, of course, Jeff's a big investor in Australian residential property, so it's he only uses the best for his property management services.
Okay, well, no client confidentiality there. You've heard it here first, people. Leafield manages all of Jeff Bezos's residential rental properties in Australia.
Yes, and just for clarity, both Nick and I have a very dry sense of humour, so just in case people were taking us seriously.
Well, I think we both know no one has ever taken us seriously in our entire lives, and we both have chips on our shoulder because of it.
Yes, I know. It's lots of counselling and coaching sessions as a result.
Well, while you were mixing with Bezos and Kim Kardashian and Oprah, I had a very nice week. My business, Hunter and Scribe, it's a copywriting agency that writes content for finance professionals throughout Australia. And we got a really nice Google review from a bookkeeper. The LinkedIn posts they create are professional, consistent, and perfectly aligned with my brand voice. Not only have they helped boost my profile and visibility, but they've also saved me countless hours I would have spent writing content myself. That extra time has allowed me to focus on business development, and it's paid off. Very nice to get those sorts of reviews, Owen.
Very good. And yes, apart from my overseas travels for weddings, yes, this past week, well, everyone knows that I love to talk about end of month in our business. And today is not just end of month, but it's end of financial year. So it's extra super exciting. So next week we can wish everyone a happy new year. So I might get in early and say, for everyone from tomorrow onwards, happy new year. For us of us in that financial world who follow the financial year instead of the calendar year, it's a very big day. Yeah. So it's going to be very busy today and for the rest of this week as well as it has been for the past week, getting ready for it. So, yeah.
So we have revealed we're recording this on June the 30th. And when we see each other again, it will be a happy new year.
Yes. So, yeah. Nick, what is in the news this week?
Our very first story is inflation falls to 2.1%, lifting rate cut hopes. The fight against inflation may be nearing the finish line, with annual inflation falling from 2.4% in April to 2.1% in May, according to the Australian Bureau of Statistics. That's the lowest level since October 2024. Trimmed mean inflation, which is the Reserve Bank's preferred measure, also fell from 2.8 to 2.4%, and that's the lowest level since November 2021. As a result, Commonwealth Bank, which previously expected the Reserve Bank to keep the cash rate on hold during its next meeting on July 8, now expects the RBA to cut rates on July 8. Okay, Owen, that's what CBA thinks. What about you? Given the news on inflation, do you expect the RBA to cut rates on July the 8th?
Yes, I do, and hopefully we get a 0.35 rate cut, so we can get back on track with the 25 basis points. Otherwise you've got to remember it's just like, is it 3.85, 4. Yeah, it's we need to get it back on track for at the 0.25% mark. It's
yes.
Yeah, so we need a 0.35% cut.
Now I'm wondering, because shouldn't it actually be a 0.4%? Because the gap, we're 0.15 percentage points off. So therefore...
No, aren't we 0.1% off?
Are we 0.1% off? Well, didn't we...
Yeah, I think it's 10 basis points. It was the lowest...
I'm thinking back to November 2020 when the RBA cut from 0.25 to 0.1. I think that's what caused the problem. So instead of cutting by 25 basis points, they cut by 15. So we're 10 off.
Yeah, so we're 10 off.
Is that what you were saying, or is that what I was saying?
No, that's what I was saying.
Okay, so I have confused myself. Okay, so yes, you're right. Yes, so it should be a cut of 0.35. What if it was a cut of 0.15? Would you accept that?
No, that'd be even more confusing.
Okay, excellent. So now that that's out of the way, why do you think
and
the RBA...
it wouldn't be worthwhile doing just a 0.15?
Okay, and why do you think the RBA will cut?
Well, even I'm agreeing now that it seems like we've finally broken the back of inflation. We're at that mean inflation of 2.8% last time. Now we're down at 2.4 with a significant drop of the 0.4. So we're finally back on track as far as I'm concerned, and I think the RBA will agree that we've finally broken the back. Part of the issue is, though, that not all segments of the market have been dropping in terms of inflation. So if you look at your grocery bill, you still wouldn't be feeling any drop in inflation. Prices are still going up, but some of the big factors have had a significant drop in inflation, like residential rents. Increasing residential rents have dropped dramatically, and also the increase in building supplies as well. So those two things affect the housing market, which is a big portion of the householding expenditure basket. So yes, they'll have a big impact on the inflation figure. But the shopping basket at the grocery store hasn't been as affected, so people aren't feeling it there. Also, petrol prices have come down quite a bit, so that's impacted as well. But it means that we should be able to afford to give some decent relief now to households with mortgages, and try and stimulate the economy a little bit, so that we don't start going the other way and fall into a recession.
Following on from that, but before inflation took off in 2021, Owen, inflation had been so low for so many years that people had stopped thinking about it. So have we now returned to the days when we no longer need to think about inflation?
Well, I think the last couple of years have been a good reminder to people that, yes, we always need to keep an eye on inflation, because it's always there, lurking under the bed, ready to pounce when you least expect it. And if if we let it out, then it can run away from us, like we've seen happen. And when you start printing money and giving it away too much, that's what will happen. So I hopefully we've learned from those these last few years, because it's been a long time since we've had a an unstable economic period like we have the last number of years.
Now, funny you should mention that. So yesterday, I did some digging into Australian Bureau of Statistics data, and here's what I found. Historically, as you know, wages have increased faster than prices, leading to increasing real wealth. However, between March 2021 and March 2025, wages increased 14.8%, while prices increased 20.1%, which explains, I think, why people have felt under increasing financial pressure. But Owen, now that inflation has returned to manageable levels, do you think we'll return to the good old days when wages consistently rose faster than prices?
That would certainly be nice, but there's a bit of catch up to happen, and we need to make sure that wages don't start growing too fast, because then that will fuel inflation, and we need to see some stability in that inflation figure for a little while longer.
Well, let's move on to our next story. HIA lays out plan to build more homes in less time. In most states and territories, builders and developers need 2 approvals to build a home, one for planning and one for building. However, the Housing Industry Association is pushing for federal and state governments to embrace a policy called One House, One Approval, which would mean just one approval would be required to build a single house on a block of land zoned for housing. The HIA said, One House, One Approval does not seek to achieve national consistency in statutory approval processes. Rather, it aims to achieve a nationally consistent outcome in terms of an approval for a single dwelling on a land zone residential. Given that each jurisdiction has existing bespoke legislative mechanisms for dwelling approvals, it would be unreasonable to aim to achieve a nationally consistent approval process. Rather, the goal can be achieved by using the bespoke legislative mechanisms already in place. Amendments to legislative requirements and processes may still be required, and the degree of change will vary between states and territories. The HIA said switching to One House, One Approval would reduce the time needed to secure approval from about 87 days to 24 days. So, Owen, what do you think of One House, One Approval?
Oh, it just sounds like common sense, doesn't it, Nick? It's sad that through this housing crisis that we've been dealing with for years now, that it takes the Housing Industry Association to come up with common sense ideas rather than all levels of government put together, trying to come up with a common sense idea to try and help this problem of red tape and delays due to government approval processes. So fairly common sense.
Okay, let me play devil's advocate though. If we switch from needing 2 approvals to just one, won't that lead to worse environmental and heritage outcomes?
There can be always exceptions to the rule. Those, if those factors are taken into account in the approval process, and those checkboxes are there to be able to cover off on any environmental or heritage issues that need to be covered, then that's just the detail that needs to be worked out. So, but for let's call it 98% of cases where it's a cookie cutter approval process, to be able to get more houses built, to be able to put more people into these houses, and to create more supply, which will stop prices from going up so much, then let's get on with it.
Okay, well, let me throw another potential concern at you. If we do manage to increase the rate at which we approve and build projects, is there a risk that the rate of infrastructure development may fail to keep pace with the rate of housing development?
Good question. And that at this stage, this would be a good problem to have. It's and then that would be another problem to fix. There's not one thing that's going to fix every single part of the problem along the process. But the bigger picture problem is we don't have enough supply in the marketplace. So, and one of the main issues that are holding up that supply is government red tape in all levels of government. So let's fix one problem at a time, Nick.
We talk a lot about housing supply on this podcast, but for our third and final story, I've got a topic that I don't think we've discussed before. The story is Australians moving home less often. From 1996 to 2021, Australia's rate of housing mobility declined from 18% of people moving home per year to 15%, according to the E61 Institute, an economic think tank. About half of that decline was due to the ageing population because people move less as they age. About 1/3 of the decline was due to 18 to 24-year-olds living longer with their parents. And other causes behind the decline include higher stamp duty costs, higher housing prices, and reduced job switching. So, Owen, is this just a quirky piece of research, or should we care that our level of housing mobility has declined?
It's it's an interesting one where Australia's from 18% of people to 15%. Yeah, because it used to be about once every 7 years. So that someone will sell their home, and yes, if that's moved out a little bit, then that's probably not surprising. I think one of the biggest costs and deterrents from downsizing or just moving in general, if you own, is the stamp duty costs. You've got selling fees on the sale, which with the rising cost of advertising for selling is just it's so exorbitant now that it's a hindrance to selling. And then when you're buying, you're especially if you're trying to downsize, it's almost not worth it. And any downsize in price that you might make, half of it ends up going in stamp duty. So what's the point? From that point of view, let's there's not as much of a reason to move when you add up the dollars and cents, and that main reason of the stamp duty cost is one reason why I've mentioned quite a few times of the need for reform with the state government taxes on property, looking at not just stamp duty but also land taxes and how we can reform those taxes to make it more efficient, to make them more efficient taxes, and actually work for us as individuals, as well as the state governments to be able to meet their budgets and provide the services that they need to for the states.
You talked about stamp duty a moment ago. What would happen to housing mobility if we replace stamp duty with a land tax?
Oh, well, it would be, instead of it being a once-off huge lump sum, it would free up the ability to be able to relocate a lot easier. And if you can relocate it a lot easier, you'd see a lot more fluidity in the property market. Because otherwise there's this huge hurdle to get over financially to be able to sell and buy again, because it just doesn't seem worthwhile. Which is why you've got a lot more people rent vesting, where they're renting where they need to live, and it's a lot easier for them to pull up stumps and move house, and because there's not that huge cost, but they're still in the property market by buying a long-term investment property that they have no intention of selling for 10 years plus. So it's and it's usually a much lower price point than they would need to buy where they want to live. So the stamp duty cost isn't as much. So it's it would put a lot more fluidity in the market, make it easier for retirees to downsize. It would make it a lot easier for growing families to be able to move into the size property that they need to, and make it a lot easier for people to change jobs to different locations, because they'll be able to easily sell and buy where they want to. So yes, it would provide a lot more flexibility. They're all the pros. The cons, of course, is that you would have a ongoing cost that you would have to pay, and it's something that people wouldn't want to have, that burden of an ongoing cost. So it doesn't have to necessarily be a or situation. We could have an and situation. Maybe a little bit of stamp duty and a little bit of the land tax, or it could be weighted in terms of the median price point in each postcode or LGA, so that the lower price properties either don't have as much or any land tax or stamp duty, or the combination of both. But whatever the makeup is, I think there needs to be some change to be able to make it a lot easier for people to be a lot more mobile with the property that they live in and they purchase.
Yeah, I think the vast majority of economists agree that stamp duty is an inefficient tax that, as you say, affects job mobility. So it means people are living in locations where it may not be the best place for them to live, and people are living in homes that may not be the most suitable home. Maybe the home is too small or too big, but the cost of moving are too much. However, it's not that easy just to get rid of stamp duty, but stamp duty brings in a lot of money for state governments. And although you can come up with a land tax that is revenue neutral in the long term, so that you're making as much money from that as you were from stamp duty, there is an adjustment period where in the short term you're making less money, and I guess state governments have to find a way to deal with that adjustment period.
Correct. And that's the politics of the situation, which makes it difficult to change.
Well, I do appreciate the chat as always, Owen. I hope next week you're back to 100%, and I look forward to hearing about what other celebrity weddings you've attended.
Okay. Well, thank you, Nick, and I look forward to filling you in on those. We'll see you then. Bye.